go, Murph Man. Oops, there we go. Hi, everybody. Welcome. Happy Tuesday. I've got it right this time. How's everybody doing? Yes, you're getting me again tonight. Sorry to report, Marianne is still not able to join us. Life is still keeping her away from us. That's going to happen from time to time. That's just life. But no worries. I got you covered. I am going to be able to handle this for you. So you can just relax and enjoy, or even better, jump into the chat and share your tips and tricks and ideas or ask your questions. Tonight we're talking about how you should be documenting the form fields in your, boy, I hope that's not a sign, in your requirements documentation. I'm sorry. So before, if you caught me, I was saying how it was like kind of noisy outside because it's the first nice day and like forever we've had rain. And so all the kids were outside riding their bikes and playing ball and all that. And Mr. Murphy was supervising through the window. So there's a lot of barking and laughing and all that going on. Well, evidently that's all changed since I started. Oh, Murph, I'm sorry. He's shaking. We're actually getting a thunderstorm now. I'm sorry, sweetie. I know. You just stay here with me. You're okay. So that's going to add to the fun. Now I'm going to have a tormented, shaking dog to deal with on top of everything else. I think I was happier with the noise outside. And also I hope the power stays on because, thunderstorm, you never know. But regardless, we are going to power through this, right? They're just throwing all these obstacles in our way, right? Does this sound familiar, right? This is the life of a BA. You're trying to do your job, you're trying to get things done, and they just keep throwing obstacles in your way. But we get through it. That's what we do. That is our superpower, or one of them anyway. Aw, poor puppy. He's really upset. I'm sorry, honey, I didn't know. I would have put the thunder shirt on you. We're one of the lucky people where the thunder shirt works, but I have to know like 10 or 15 minutes ahead of time. So, didn't know that we were going to get thunderstorm right now. So, sorry, pup, you're going to have to just power through it. Right? It's okay. You can hang out with me. All right. So, we are in all the usual places, so that's all good. You can throw the comments in if you want. Matter of fact, I should probably test the comments. That's probably a good idea. And then we can get started. Let me just try a comment just to make sure that they're working for me because evidently the universe is still fighting back. So we'll try one just to see. Because I've got my little tool here and I think it's all set up, but we'll know in a second. In the meantime, it is 1 minute beforehand, so you still have time to go and grab a beverage of choice, get comfy on the sofa or wherever you are. I'm going to do that too, and hopefully I'll be able to keep my voice through this whole thing. Let me make sure I've got, yes, I do have Periscope going, so you folks on Periscope, you can feel free to go ahead and toss your comments in. We are always happy to have your participation in this. I know it's a little bit harder. You can't do the comments on the replays, and I don't have a tool that grabs them, so it's a little bit more of a challenge to catch them. But it does look like we are ready to rock and roll, so that is a good thing. Okay, so I'm going to keep Periscope up because you guys are the ones that the tool won't work for, although it doesn't look like the tool's working either. Yay! Okay, everybody, I'm going to hit the magic button. We're going to start this show. We're going to get it all covered. Are you with me? Are you going to help me through this one? I'm counting on you. All right, hang on. Hello and welcome. My name is Kathleen and this is the BA Zone. Pay no attention to that sign. That's a different show. Welcome. Thank you so much for coming by. Tonight we're going to talk about how you should be documenting your form fields in your requirements document. Now you may say, why should I care? The developers take care of that. It's not my issue. All these kinds of things. Nope, I'm sorry. This is super important because if you really think about the backbone of any application is the form fields, right? Because that's how you collect information. That is how you present information that needs to be edited. It is how the information goes back and forth, right? Otherwise, it's just a website with passive information. So whether we're talking login fields or user profiles, or if they're actually going in and editing an order or database requests or whatever it is that a person has to say, hey system, go do something, and hit the button to make that happen, that's a form. There are fields involved, and if you don't document them correctly, you run the risk of creating a system by mistake, that is confusing, doesn't conform to existing patterns, doesn't communicate well to your user community, may actually contradict the rest of your application if this is a legacy system that you're adding or enhancing. So it is really important that it gets documented. Also, you're actually really being helpful to your developers too. In addition to like making sure that things work really well for your user community. Poor puppy is so upset. But by doing this, providing this information, you're taking a little bit of weight off of the developers, because otherwise they'd have to sit there and figure out each and every one. And the odds of them, taking the time to go and look and see, okay, well, how are we doing this other places, make sure it's consistent, is not going to happen. So you're helping them, you're helping your users, and that's going to make your project go along better. So that's why we're talking about this now, right? This is super important. So let me just, yes, where you look like we're all live, it looks like everything is steady, because that's the other problem, especially in a rainstorm. All right, so let's dive into this, right? So at the core of this is the issue of, garbage in, garbage out, right? That you hear that all the time when you're working with IT teams, right? And there's a real purpose behind that, because the systems can only give back the information in as good a form as they received it. Now, whether that's form fields or whatever, there's a lot of ways to get information in there, but we're specifically going to focus on the form fields. Because that is a big part of how humans interact with the system. All the other things can be automated and be system to system type of thing, or file uploads, whatever. But this is where humans are interacting with it, and this is humans are, well, let's just say slightly inconsistent. That's probably the nicest way to put it, right? So we want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to make our system consistent for them, so they're not confused about what they're doing, and that we are encouraging their best behavior, right? We're not letting them make mistakes, right? We're encouraging them to create data, submit to us in the right format, in the right order, all that kind of stuff. And the way to do that is by making sure that all of your form fields and the form elements within those are structured in such a way that you're getting the right things done, right? Okay, so let's start off with the basics. Let me make this go away and switch to here. Ta-da! Oh, I love a good slideshow. Don't worry, it's not too painful. Okay, hello, I'm back. So let's start off with the obvious, right? Because I start throwing these terms around, and I'm sure that there are some people out there whose eyes has already glazed over because you're like, I have no idea what you're talking about. It's okay. I totally understand that. It's all a part of the overall education. And these may be terms that you have heard before, but maybe you don't really understand. So let's kind of put it in some context here. So anytime you go anywhere, and I'm actually going to try to bring something up. Let me just think of something. Of course, your brain goes, oh, how about, oops, I need like that. Anytime you go in to do anything on the web, basically, you're going to end up at some point working on a form, right? You're going to be completing a form. Now, the most basic of those is this, right? So you've got your input field here. Let me make that a little bigger for you. There you go. Now you can see it. So you've got your input field here, right? You've got a little extra checkbox here. You've got to put in a code, and then you have to sign in. This here is a form. Now, you may have never looked at this before. Don't panic. It's okay. I'm going to walk you through it. I know a lot of people get really wound up about looking at code, but code is our friend. Code is a good way to figure out what's going on. And this tool that I'm using is just my browser. So let's look at this from the big picture. Where is the form? Okay, so the form, so as I hover here, now you can ignore the part that's going over the llama's face, but that blue block that you're seeing there, that is the form container, okay? And it really is, that's the name of it, it's form. If you look up here where the cursor is, it's form, and then there's some extra information about it. But at the core of it, there's a beginning to the form and there's an end to the form. And every type of input like this, whether you're placing an order with Amazon, you're ordering food from Grubhub, whatever it is that you're doing, that's what's really going on behind it. That's the underneath working mechanisms, right? And then when you get into the individual pieces here, so this is a piece, right? This is the label. Okay, so you see this here. Let's see, did they do this right? I bet they did. Oh wait, it looks like they did. Oh, I like these people. Maybe I could work with them. Let's see. Nope. Nope, they didn't do it right. Okay. we won't get into that. So there's a right or wrong way to do it for accessibility. This is okay, but it's not optimal. But so you see here, so this is the label. So it actually says label for, and then the for reference is actually the name of the field that it's related to. So you see the ID here is enter ID dash input. Okay, and if you go up here, it says label for enter ID dash input. So that's how the system makes the connection that this label goes to this field, because the field could be here, the field could be here. There's a lot of different places people put fields these days. But this is how the system makes the connection between these two elements. So they always travel together, especially in a responsive setup. You do want these pieces to travel together. So, same thing here. So this is just a checkbox, right? So if you look over here, this is the code for the checkbox. So all of these pieces of information are things that you should provide to your developer. And really, in the big picture, if you go back to our earlier shows about data dictionaries, this is the kind of stuff that should be a part of your data dictionary, because your data dictionary should be a listing of the field name, the field label, the whether it's required or not, the information that can go into it. Is it numeric? Is it alphanumeric? Is it a date field? Is it a phone field? Those kinds of things. And in a really detailed data dictionary, and this is going someplace, it ties back here, but a really detailed one, it should also say, this is the placeholder, this is the error text, all this kind of stuff. Why? Because then when you're doing your documentation for this kind of a project, right? We've all got to deal with the login forms and the sign up forms and all that stuff, right? If you've got a data dictionary, you can just go to that and say, okay, what do we use for the name? What do we use for password? Boom, put it in there. You've got all the information then if it's in your data dictionary. If it's not, and the odds are very high that when you start your project, it won't be, that's okay too, because then what you can do is, as you are documenting it for your requirements, you can also then start building out your data dictionary, and then just every project you work on, keep adding to that as you go along. And if you're working on a legacy system and you're doing an update, use that opportunity to populate your data dictionary as you're adding the information about the new stuff, and then you take all that information and include it in your requirements document. That way the developers don't have to guess. They don't have to remember. You don't have to work off of their memory. And by taking it and putting it into your requirements document, you don't have to force them, because they won't do it, you don't have to force them to go into a data dictionary and dig for it. Okay, you pull out the pieces that are important to them and you put it right in, and that way it's right in front of them when they work on it. Because if you think about all of the things a developer has to deal with, right? They're thinking about security and database connections and speed and load times, and in the meantime somebody's yelling about them about a different project that's gone wrong and they need help with. So every little thing like this that you can incorporate into your requirements is time savings for them, it's brain processing savings for them, and the end result is everything ends up being more consistent, more reliable for everybody who uses the system or works on this project. So you really can't lose by doing this. You just have to suck it up and do it. And the good thing is, each time you do it, it gets easier because you've got the history of the previous stuff. And then you can share that. So when a new person comes and joins your team, they don't have to go in and figure this stuff out from scratch. You can say, here's a gift. Here's the data dictionary we use. The updated version is located here. Please always go and look at it there and use that for your... Believe me, they will want to throw you a parade. If somebody starts new on your team as a BA and you give that to them, yes, they will get you the crown, the scepter, and throw flowers at you, because it's a wonderful moment when that happens. It just doesn't happen very often, unfortunately. Sorry, I want to make sure that I've got... Yes, okay. All right, so... Hopefully you're getting the point that this is really important. And that's why it was kind of easy for me to jump in on this one, because this is a big one for me. All right, so let's get back to our scheduled presentation. All right, I made myself notes because I wanted to make sure I go through all this, because okay, full disclosure, I do front-end coding. So a lot of this is in my brain, so I have to make sure I write it down, because otherwise I'm afraid I might assume too much, and I don't want to do that, because that is not a nice thing to do to people. Okay, so yeah, we're good. All right, so what are the form elements, right? So anybody who's actually coded might be looking at this going, wait, that's not right. There's way more than that. These are just the high-level form elements. Where you get the variety and the richness out of it is when you apply the types and the attributes to them. So let's just look at this real quick, because you'll start to see, even if you don't code, okay, and please don't get freaked out. This is not something to get panicked about. You don't have to actually code to do this. It just helps if you don't understand it or you can read it, and we'll get into that in a minute. So button, right? That's the little thing that everybody pushes to submit or clear or cancel, that kind of stuff. A data list is what you would expect. It's a list of data that they can select from. A field set is a way to combine a group of fields. So if you think about like a checkout, right? So you've got, maybe the person's name, you've got their credit card information, you've got their billing address, you've got their ship to address, and then you've got the actual order itself, right? That is all often in one big form, and yes, you can actually have multiple forms now. Once upon a time, you could only have one form on a page. That's changed. But there's logical grouping to that information. So you don't want to necessarily, you're going to wrap it maybe all in one form if you want, but you don't want to just be a run-on series of forms. So what you can do is you can make a field set out of them and group things like address or all of the information for the credit card, right? Because there's a certain logical grouping, right? There's the number for the credit card, there's the expiration date, and then there's usually some kind of a code, right? And sometimes they ask for the zip code, at least here in the US. So that you would turn into a field set, because that would be a whole grouping, and then you can choose to show like a little border around it, again, to kind of visually group it. But it's just another way to make a set out of it. And then also, I'm just going to skip ahead a little bit, it also works for accessibility. So like the screen readers and that type of things, the ARIA readers can actually go in and they identify that as a grouping. They understand what that means, and so they will explain it that way to the person using the accessible device. Make sense? Keygen, you're not going to use too much probably, but it's a handy thing to have just in case. The label we talked about, so that's like, username, on the login form, and then the user field, and then password is the label for the password field. Pretty simple. Legend is exactly that. So if you do a graphic table, that kind of thing, you can put a legend at the bottom. Option groups is when you get into things like radio buttons and checkboxes. Output is if you are actually showing them the result of something. So again, we'll go back to the, only because everybody uses it, the checkout form. So the output might be that as you're going through it, you maybe like based on the information that they give you for the billing information, then you give them shipping charges, right? So that could be output, because it's just static text. They can't change that, but it is the result of information that they gave them above. So output is one way to do that. Select is a bunch of selectable items, right? And text area is either a long line where they can just free text, or the text box that very often you have like a little counter under it that tells them how many characters they have left. Okay, so I mean, if you think about it, these are the building blocks of any form that you're going to work on. So now let's just keep going. Oh, what's the matter? I'm sorry, 1 second. I feel bad for him. He's upset. You're okay. You're okay. I wish he'd come sit in my lap, but he doesn't like this chair for some reason. He doesn't like the fact that it moves. It's on wheels. Anyway, okay. So, like I said, I know that when you first look at this, you're like, that can't be all of it, and it's not. These are just the high-level ones, and then by adding type and different attributes to it, you get different things out of it. Now, if you are like, wait, that's not what we call them, but I kind of recognize them. Some people call these just data elements, form fields, inputs. There's different ways that people refer to this kind of stuff, but whatever it is, whether you go with form elements or something else, let me see if I can get he's not going to go for it. That it doesn't matter. This is what they're talking about. This is what's important, is that these are the pieces that they're talking about, and these are the pieces you need to make sure are clearly defined in your particular application. Now, you're not going to need all of these for everything, right? I mean, obviously, but that's okay. So that's the whole thing, is you start off with a list, and then you only provide the information for the pieces that apply to the particular view that you're documenting in that part of the requirements, right? And that works, just to cover it, whatever form of project management your place uses. If you're using waterfall, if you're using agile, if you're using whatever, it doesn't matter. This is still the information that is required in order to build the view and collect the data and display the data. These are all the important pieces. So you can't just say, I am so-and-so, and for this, I want them to use the standard fields. That's not good enough. You have to get specific. You have to get down into the details enough so they know exactly what fields, what they're supposed to do, which are required, which are not, and so on. Okay? If you think about it, it makes sense. But it's the kind of thing that gets overlooked if you don't point it out. I guess that's the easiest way to put that. Okay, so let's just talk about the different types. Now, this is just the variations for one of the previous ones. Okay, so input is one, and then there's all these different types that give you all that richness and all that flexibility. So input type button. Now, yes, there's a buttoned element, and you can do an import type of button. That's a whole other conversation. There are pros and cons and time to use one over the other. Just accept the fact right now that yes, there are some differences. There are different combinations, and we'll just move on. By the way, if you are interested in this topic and you would like us to get into more detail on it, to be perfectly honest, it would probably be about an hour to an hour and a half. So we would probably do that as a class. If you're interested in it, by all means, go right ahead. Let us know. We are perfectly happy to dive into it. It's just a little bit more than we can do in this length of a show. But okay, we'll put that aside for now. So you've got button, you've got checkbox, you have got color, right? You've got date. You can do date, time, local. Yeah, you get into some browser issues there, but it is an option. Email, right? File, blah, blah, blah. So I'm not going to read through all of these. The important thing to understand is that you want to obviously use the right type for the right data, okay? So for example, you are not going to put a type of, let me just pick one, date, okay? So you're not going to say input equals date and then ask them to put their name in, right? Because dates are numeric and names are not necessarily numeric. Also, date fields are usually, 2, 4, 7, right? Or, a name could be longer, shorter, or whatever. So you just want to make sure that you're marrying the right one to the right one. Now, there's another payoff to doing this the right way and putting the right type onto the right field. I mean, some people try to get away with just making everything a text input and letting the chips fall where they may. That makes it much harder to do validation on it. It makes it much harder to keep the user from making mistakes, right? Because they might inadvertently do something wrong because you're not putting any controls around it. The other benefit of doing this is on touch devices. So whether we're talking a phone or Chromebook or tablet or whatever, or frankly, these screens, right? I'm pointing at, I've got multiple screens here. Could be a touch device, right? They could be using, for whatever reason, a touch, keyboard on it, right? A screen keyboard. By using these different things, the system will know whether or not they need to show them a special keyboard. So if you think about it, and it may have been subconscious, but especially like when you're working on your phone and if you're going to complete a form someplace and you get to the date field or to the phone number field, right? And suddenly the system automatically switches from the QWERTY keyboard to just numeric. And don't you go, great, because I don't have to go and dig and try to hit just the right pieces because only the values I need are in front of me. That's how that is done. If you specify these things correctly, you don't need JavaScript, you don't need .NET, you don't need any special, I'm just blanking out on the native browser, native app terms for this, but whatever. You don't need to know anything special. Just by specifying it correctly in the HTML, the browsers take care of it for you. That's a huge win, right? Developer doesn't have to do any coding, and there's no special stuff in it, it just works. And if it doesn't work for whatever reason in that browser, if they're really working on an old browser, it just gets ignored and a regular keyboard is shown. So there's no downside to it, but there's a huge benefit by doing it. But if you don't specify it this way, this way. Why can't I can never get this right. It's this way. That's it. This way. It's totally backwards because my screen is actually here. But if you specify these things this way, do this correctly, then all kinds of benefit to your developer, all kinds of benefit to your users. This is the good stuff, folks. This is where the technology actually starts to help. I'm just checking to see what is going on. Oh, hang on, I'm just... This doesn't need to be on the screen, but... As soon as I finish my show, this person knows I'm doing a show right now. Okay, I'm just yanking a little chain there just because I can, because it's fun. And you gotta have some fun, right? Okay, so I'm just double checking here to make sure we're all good. Everybody is fine. Awesome. Everything is awesome. Sorry. I'm really excited about the Lego games deal. If you're into Lego games, Humble Bundle has a really good deal on the Lego games today. I'm just saying. Okay. All right, so this is the kind of stuff that you need to be able to get into. And again, you don't have to be uber coder. You don't have to be able to code the front end stuff. I'm going to show you how you can get this information without having to learn a lick of code. Okay, so don't panic. Stick with me on this. We're going to get there. It's all going to be fine. Okay, and here we are. How to document the form elements, right? This is the important part. Okay. The one warning I have to give you as we go into this section is the examples that you will find online, not through nefarious reasons, but they're going to be wrong or incomplete pretty much across the board. Okay, it is exceedingly rare to go to a tutorial site, any kind of book, any kind of information like that, and get the full, complete examples. There's lots of reasons for that. The basic one being that they're usually focused on teaching you one thing and they don't want to overwhelm. So they're only giving you the snippet, but they don't ever actually say to you, hey, this is missing part of it. Okay, and that's the part that I have a problem with, because then I have arguments with people who go, well, I just went to this site or that site and they're well known and they say I only need this. And I'm like, they only said that if you read the whole thing above it, because that's all they were talking about. They didn't say this is the complete and perfect example. This is how you do this part of it. So it's important to keep that understand. And that is why it is so much better. I mean, you can go to those sites because they do break it into little pieces, which if you are curious or you want to get a better understanding, that is a good place to go and get that kind of information. If you want to, do a little testing with it, a lot of them have little sandboxes you can work in. That's all awesome. But when you are really trying to understand how to make these things work in the real world, go find a site that is doing it right, like test it on your mobile device, test it on your desktop, make sure that it's responsive and fluid and bringing up the right keyboards, and then do the view source. Just like we were just talking about. Did I actually shut down that window? That would have been very silly of me. Let me bring that window back up. There we go. So I'm going to show you real quick here now what I'm talking about. And it's really not a big deal. It's really not hard. And it will feel overwhelming the first couple of times you do it, but the more you do it and look for specific things, it will all suddenly, it's like you're looking at this massive chaos and all of a sudden it just like gels and it just comes into focus in front of you and all of a sudden it all makes sense. And you are able to pick out the pieces that you're looking for. So let's actually just look at this, okay? One sec. Just bringing it up again. So I'm just sticking with, login fields because that's nice and, simple and straightforward. Okay, for whatever reason, I've landed on a different version of their site, but that's okay because it doesn't really matter. This works for everything. So whether you are in Internet Explorer, let me bring that. It would help if you could see what I'm talking about. Let me take that away. Whether you're in Internet Explorer, Chrome, Firefox, Opera, whatever your browser choice is, doesn't matter. There is, usually you can just right click on the screen, okay, and you can say view page source, and this is what that looks like. This can be a little overwhelming, but if you do Control F, you can actually search for things. So if you wanted to search for input, it would start to show you all the inputs, but you still get a lot of results. So this is a way to go, but it's not necessarily the best way to go, especially if you're not comfortable with this. The better option is to go in. Now, sometimes you have to turn on something called developer tools. Don't let that freak you out. But then you get these options down here, right? The inspect. So, whoops, I'm sorry. I'm covering that. Let me make that just come up. Come on. Seriously. There we go. That's what I wanted. So you've got, view page source, which is just that massive core dump that I just showed you. Okay, this is just all the code. It's all in here, but it may be overwhelming. So rather than do that, do the right click and look for inspect. And if it's not there, go into your settings or more tools and make sure that you turn on developer tools. If you do a quick Google search for the browser you're in, it will tell you exactly how to get there. It's not a big deal. And then what you do, once you've got inspect, you're going to get a little window. Now sometimes it shows over to the right, sometimes it shows at the bottom. You can change where it shows if you have a preference. Look at that. It's a nice responsive site. Don't you love that, right? Did you notice? This is a good example of how to do things, right? So this is in a full screen view, right? You've got the field over here and you've got other information here. But when it gets tight, you don't lose any functionality. It just changes the layout so that it fits better into the container. I don't necessarily like Bank of America all the time, but I give kudos to whoever coded this because they've done it right. Okay, so once you've got this, right, so you've done the right click, you've said inspect, which gives you this window here, then you want to look for this little box with the arrow up here. I don't know if I can make that any bigger. Let's see. No, unfortunately not. Okay. But it's right here. It's just literally a box with a little pointer in it. And then when you click on that, you see how now when you hover over, all these different pieces start to light up? And what's happening, so you're lighting up on the left side here, right? So you're lighting up where the different pieces are, the different blocks. And then if you look over on the side, see, unfortunately I need like 2 cursors for this. You'll see where all the code is in the upper right corner. You see that it's also highlighting this exact block. So this way you can tell exactly what it is that you need to look at. So like for our case, let's click on, come on, this, okay? And then you click here, and now you've got all of the details about how this particular one is coded. Okay, so you've got, it's an input, it's type password, which we were just talking about. It's got an ARIA label, that is accessibility stuff. If you're doing that, great. If not, you don't have to worry about it. But from here, you're getting all of this information. The max length, which really should be handled in the CSS, but this is better than nothing. You know, the ID is here, all this kind of stuff. Now this is a field that doesn't have a label on it, but instead, let me see if I can find it, they are using a placeholder. They're also using a plugin. Where is the placeholder? There it is, right there, placeholder passcode. Now the other fun thing, if you really want to get into it, and this is just sort of bonus knowledge for people who are interested, you can go in and you can say edit, you know, HTML. So you see how it says passcode here? So I can change that. I just lost it. Let me find it. Here we go. And make it say, hello world. Is it going to work? Okay. And even my typo shows up. So now I haven't actually changed, let me be clear here, okay? I haven't actually changed their site, okay? This is just in the version that has downloaded to my browser. I've tried something. So if you're not sure, like if you're looking at the code and you're like, I'm not sure this is exactly the piece that I'm looking for, you can go in and make a little change like this to see, you know, hey, did the right thing change on the page? Okay, I'm looking at the right code. And then when you're ready to get the code back, super easy. All you have to do is hit refresh. Oops, where's my little login? Okay, and it comes right back. So you're not doing any damage, but you're learning something and you're also testing something. So if you wanted to see, okay, so let's do this again. Let's go here and we do this, and let's say, you know, unfortunately for whatever reason your shop is doing hard-coded sizes, which really should be controlled in the CSS, but we'll save that argument for another day. So we're in here, right? I just lost it. Let me just bring this back. All right, so we're back in the password field, right? And let's say you wanted to see what this would look like if you changed it to a max length of 10. Is there any other? So you need to look for other lengths in here. I'm getting a lot of glare here, so it's a little tough, but okay, so it looks like that's it. So let me just save that. Now if I type, okay, so I should actually only do this here. It'll show up better here. I should have thought about that. I'm in a password field. It's not going to work well here. All right, hang on one sec. Edit HTML. Okay, so this is the input field. So just to show you that I am working on this. Oh, that's interesting. They actually did it both ways. Here's the placeholder. Okay, so now when I switch it back, it says hello. So now I know I'm in this field, right? This is the field I wanted to test. So I'm going to come back here and I'm going to edit as HTML. And let's say, so right now the max length is 32, which means it will accept up to 32 characters. So I'm going to say, well, what would happen if I make it 5? I wonder if that would feel like enough for our project. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. See, it's not letting me type anymore because I said, keep it to 5 characters, just in this code. Now, when I refresh this page, it's going to go back to what it's used to be. Log in, and you do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Whoops, look, let me go back into the field. Okay, so there we go. So that's work. So this is the whole point of me showing you this is that I want you to see how easy it is to go to somebody's site that you like. And if you want to see, you know, okay, how did they do this button? What code did they use for this? You can come right here, do the inspect, right? Highlight it. And then over here, you've got this information, and you can expand it if there's more, so you can see the text they used and everything. And if this works for you, if this is the code you need, and every so often you get that easy, you get that lucky. You want to go to the highest level and say edit, and literally you can copy and paste this and put it into a document. I mean, this is what I mean by you want to go find good examples. You're going to find better examples in living sites and applications than you will find from any training document, any training site, any tutorial, any book. Not that those aren't valuable, because they totally are, but they're going to give you a narrow view of whatever the topic is that you're looking at, whereas if you go online, you're going to see the bigger picture. Now, there's always going to be stuff in there that maybe you don't understand or doesn't seem to apply, and that's fine. Then you can just leave that out. Could be special code that they're using, could be a special plugin that they've got. That's not as important as you just being able to get in there and say, okay, this needs to be a button. The button should be, you know, should have a class of whatever on it. Or, you know, if you're not using classes, please go and encourage your place to start using classes. Just let's see if I can bring this up in a way that's easier to see. Give me one sec. You know what I can do? Hang on. Okay. And I think I do. I'm just making this bigger so you can see it. Of course, I'll probably make it too big. Yeah. I tend to go too far the other way. Let's cut that back a little bit. How about like this? Okay, here we go. Okay, perfect. Perfect. Oh, I love it when a plan comes together. So, this is exactly what I just copied from their site. Now, before we go too far down this road, no, this is not plagiarism. No, that you're not stealing anything. This is how everybody's learned the internet. This is how everybody's learned to do coding. So if you just wanted to do, oh nice, I've got little animations that go on it. You probably won't need this part, especially to start. But it's kind of nice that it's there. But if you just wanted to get the button stuff, you could say, okay, you know, this is what I need. You need to have a class, needs to have a type, you know, needs to have an ID on it, that type of thing. And then you could just put that into your document. Just doing this, which is kind of basic, there's more I would do to this particular element, but just doing this immediately makes your document more valuable to the developers, makes their job easier, makes it better code, and if you are consistent about the patterns that you're following here, then you're going to be writing requirements that generate an application or a solution that works much, much better for your users. And isn't that what this is all about, right? That's what we're here for. This is what the whole focus is. So don't be scared by it. Don't worry. You can always come back, you know, during the replay, and you can, I'm looking where the camera used to be. You can always come back to this replay and go through this more slowly and, you know, copy what I did on any website you want to go to and get comfortable with it. But that is hands down the easiest, fastest way to figure out what it is that you need to tell your developers, your QA team in your requirements document about the fields. And by doing it this way and doing it off of something live, you know you're getting all the pieces you need and that it works, right? So these are the important things in life. Okay, let me see. I just want to make sure I got everything here. Also, I'm sorry I haven't been checking comments. But it looks like we're good. We're good. That's good. I like that. Alrighty, so let me just get myself caught up here because in moving around everything, I lost everything. One sec. Okay, let's move on. So, how do you document your form fields, right? So first of all, you're going to always hear this from me. I never miss a chance to say it. Make sure that you're encouraging fluid responsive coding. You're going to hear things like hard-coded. You're going to hear things like breakpoints. You're going to hear things like browser sniffing. These are all bad things, okay? These are things that we used to have to do back in the day. Now, granted, in internet time back in the day was probably a couple of years ago. But the point is, there are people, that learn how to do something one way, and that's how they're going to keep doing it every day for the rest of their lives, unless somebody says, hang on, things have changed. We don't have to do that. This is how we do it now. So as much as you can, try that. You're not always going to win, but at least if you try, you stand a better chance than if you never asked. You're also going to maybe hear from your boss, developers, your project manager. Oh, no, we don't need that. We're doing native. Native needs all of this too. All of this applies to native. Ideally, these days, you're not doing native and web. There are still people who don't understand that you don't have to do that anymore, because if you build something that is truly fluid and responsive, it works across all devices and you don't have to support multiple code bases. But either way, if they try to tell you that, they are just, let's say, misinformed, okay? Because native mobile has all these things, they just use different labels on, different terms for it, okay? So, what might be an input, with password for the web might be something different depending on the language being used for your native mobile, okay? It's not really a big deal, but sometimes people get very wrapped up in that. So, when you are documenting it, you want to make sure that you're listing out all the attributes and the settings. This actually should also say the types. Include the accessibility stuff if you possibly can. It should be encouraged. It should be in everything these days. But the nice win is if you just follow HTML5 and CSS3 standards, you automatically get the win of some accessibility. If you can go farther with it and do the ARIA and that kind of stuff, that's great. But don't let that stop you. Don't let not knowing that yet now stop you from doing this. It's not necessary. If you've got to start without it, start without it. You can always do that later. You want to specify the CSS wherever you can and encourage strongly no inline styles. I'm not going to get into a big thing about CSS right now, but the important part of that is CSS stands for cascading style sheets. The key word there is cascading, right? Cascading means it comes down. So basically the last one wins. So if you are using style sheets and you specify that your headings are all this font size, this font and in blue, and somebody down in the code does H1, style equals color, changes the size, changes the color, and changes the size, or any individual one of those, that will override what you had up top. Now, there are 1 in a million cases where you have to do that. It should be the rare exception, okay, not the rule. Because the whole point of the style sheets is that it makes everything consistent all the way through. It makes it so much easier when marketing decides that all of our headings are going to go from red to blue. You go into the style sheet, you change it in one place, and it works everywhere. It cascades throughout your whole application. So, end of rant on that, but do encourage that and do try to point them away from inline styles, because that breaks the whole point of it. Wherever possible, once upon a time, you had to specify things like size, the minimum size, the maximum size, how the cursor should behave, the hover state, the active state, all that kind of stuff in the HTML code. You don't have to anymore. You actually shouldn't anymore. You should do all that in the CSS. SCSS is even better. Again, don't get overwhelmed if these are terms you don't know. It's okay. Just being able to say these things at a meeting will maybe sometimes win the day. So here's an example of a very, simple but very common thing, right? Username. So we're going to hang out in the world of, I'm sorry, I should bring this up for you. Did I actually I didn't go, let me go back. I'm so sorry. How far back do I need to go? Somebody tell me. All right, I'll just go through. I'll just leave this up here for a minute. So these are all just about, this stuff that I'm talking about here, okay? This stuff is the kind of stuff that you would want to put in like your business rules or in your description or in your use case for, depending on how you're documenting things, for your particular piece of the project or your entire project. These are the overarching kinds of things, as is this. Okay, it's about, making sure you've got all these kind of pieces in there and encouraging the accessibility in the CSS. This, I have to take my picture off. This is an example of how you would want to actually document it. Hang on one sec. Okay, losing my voice. So this is a real simple example, but this is all you need. Okay, so these are the details for the username form element. Okay, so the label is going to be enter your username or email addresses. So that is the label that would show over the username field. Set the form type to input and text. Give it a name. Now, the name you may or may not be the people to specify. In that case, you can just, instead of actually putting an actual value in here, just put in, developer decision. It depends on your situation, how comfortable you are in code and all that kind of stuff. Also, it could be that they're using a particular naming convention. So whatever. The whole point for me here is I always make sure that it's here so it doesn't get forgotten. And the value they put in, well, that's really most of the time up to them unless I happen to know what it is that they're using. By the way, that view source thing, that view source or the identify one, that works on your own stuff too. Just saying, if you want to find out how they're building things, it's a good way to go in and look. Class, okay, so that's another thing that you're going to want to list there. Again, so the class would be the CSS reference if you are either building the CSS for them, which I do, but not everybody does, or maybe there's a developer that is focused on the front end stuff and that's what they're doing. You could work with that person to find out what the actual values are so you can assign the right one to it. If not, then you can just say, class, see whoever that person is. Required is just a yes, no. Is this field required or not? Simple, but they need to know. Placeholder is, so for things like the input fields, the drop lists, date, that type of thing, those date selectors, you can put light gray text in there that will explain to them what to do with it. So if you have the label on it, this is a way to give them like a little extra instruction. And so you can actually put that text in there. And I do recommend, this is one where I recommend you write it, because a lot of times developers write in developer speak, which is not helpful to your end user. So it's better if you write it in that language. Or if you're really, really lucky and you're working on a team that has a tech writer, ask them to do this for you. Give them a whole list of the ones that you need. They're going to need to understand what it is, what the process is, and what this field is in context, and then they can help you write those or write them for you. The title is the name for the element. Again, you'll either give that to them. Again, I would recommend giving that to them like I would give them the placeholder, because in some browsers and in some accessibility devices, the title is something that is read off to the user to explain what it is that they're going to be doing in this section. So again, you want to make sure it's not developer speak and instead is very user friendly. So I would go ahead and put that in. The ARIA stuff, again, I put it in here for you folks who are either doing accessibility yourself or you have an accessibility member on the team. Make sure that they're given the chance to put their pieces in there. Autocomplete, auto-capitalize, and spell check. Sometimes you're going to want to set those on, sometimes you're going to set those off. So as an example, some place that you would want to maybe set them off is on like a credit card field, or on a password, or on a username. Sometimes they're turned off. So, but this is just an idea of the structure. I mean, obviously the table wouldn't be split, it would be stacked, but I'm using slides, and you know how you run out of space on these. But this is just to kind of explain, to show you, just build a little table, break it out, put the element in one column, put the details in the right column, and you're on your way to documenting it. Then I would take this and put it into the spreadsheet that we use to track the data dictionary. And again, if you don't know what I'm talking about when I'm saying data dictionary, if you go back and do some searches in the earlier videos that we've done at least 2 on that, probably more. So you can get up to speed on that too, because this is one of these, one hand washing the other kind of things. While you're defining these and documenting these in your requirements, you can make sure they go into your data dictionary so the next person doesn't have to remember all this stuff or figure it all out. They can just go into the data dictionary and put it in and populate it. And that also will help you going forward as you continue to work on these things. It feels like a lot of work and as you're doing it, but it is such a time saver long term. And it's awesome for new developers coming on board, new BAs coming on board, new QA folks coming on board. If you can just hand this to them and say, hey, the updated version is always, here's the URL, or here's the file location, saves them so much time. It helps them get up to speed so much faster. So this is a massive win across the board with what feels like a lot of work at first, but in hindsight, you'll realize was not that much work. Trust me, it works. I do throw parties every time I go in a place that actually has this in place. Okay, let me bring this back up. What's the next slide? Oh, okay, I need to take my face away again. Sorry, I'm just trying to not sound like a headless voice here. So this is just another example. So this is the password one. So again, you can go back and you can compare and contrast these later, or if you're watching it on the replay, you can stop and rewind. The replays are wonderful. So this is the password. Again, I'm not going to go through it in great detail, but you'll see a lot of the elements are the same, but have different values, right? and then you can go through and document those. And then this is just one to show you something that's a little bit different, right? So the button. So you'll notice that it's got fewer, because that's what happens here. And then you've got, some things that do carry across and are the same, but of course with different values in it. So I am going to take a second here and I want to do a quick check and see if anybody has any questions that I might have missed. Especially on Periscope, if you put in a question or a comment or a tip that you'd like to share, and I didn't catch it, go ahead and put it in again, because that's the one problem with Periscope. We love you, Periscope. It is a bit of a problem there. Jessica, I'm glad you're finding this useful. See, I knew my tool wasn't working. Facebook is having problems. I've been having problems just in general, and my comment tool isn't working, so I'm glad you're finding this helpful. That's what we're here for. I'm just curious, and you don't have to answer obviously, but I'm just curious if you don't mind answering. Is this the kind of stuff that you're already doing, or is this new to your documentation process? We're just curious. We actually might do a survey on that, because we're not sure how common it is across the board. Hopefully it will get more common, because it really does help everybody across the way. Okay, so awesome. We can just keep going here, and I'm just going to share some tips and tricks, because as usual, every time I do the show it goes long, because I get very caught up in this, as you can tell. In full disclosure, this is an area that I have a certain amount of passion for, so I apologize. The show just did go a little bit long, but hopefully it's worth it for the information that you are getting out of it. Okay, so we're just going to cover a couple tips and tricks. This is a good time actually to remind you that if you're watching this on the replay, or after you've watched the live, if you have questions or comments, or you want more information, these are all the places you can find us. So we have the website, thebazone.com. We're on Twitter, we're on Instagram, we're on Periscope, we're on Facebook, we're on YouTube. So wherever it is that you like to be, you can reach out to us, and we are more than happy, after the fact, to go ahead and answer your questions, or give you more information, or point you to resources. Don't be shy. That's what we're here for. Okay, so just a couple of little tips and tricks. Okay? Save time in the future, right? So as I was talking about before, by doing this and documenting it, you are creating a resource for you and everybody else on your team to refer to going forward. So it will save you a huge amount of time. And if you are lucky enough to walk into a place that has a data dictionary, that should be your first stop when you need to do this kind of stuff. Don't guess if they're handing it to you. So if they have a data dictionary and you know that you need to enter an address field, everybody does address fields differently. Makes me a little crazy, but it's the way it is. So you don't have to guess. You don't have to go through and try to compare or contrast all the different places they're doing addresses to see if they have a pattern. Go to the data dictionary. That is the Bible for this stuff. So you can go in, see how they're using their addresses. Maybe they do different ones. So maybe it's like different if it's a mailing address versus a ship to address. Maybe they ask for different information, but that information will all be there. If there is no data dictionary and you're the one figuring this out, go look for sites where that you're like, hey, this really works. You got your order on time, in the right place, and then go and see how they're coding it and take those best practices and apply them in yours. Then go and start to build your own data dictionary. Trust me, this is a huge payoff across the board for everybody. And that was my tip 2. Go view source or use the inspect to go and see how things are coded, what values they're using, what are the types, what are the attributes, what are they including, what are they not, in actual code, actual working code, like sites, go to Amazon, go to your bank, go to all the places, and if you're in a specialty area, maybe you can find something that's fairly close to what you're doing and kind of take a peek at what they're doing, because this is all about using established patterns, right? You're not looking to reinvent the wheel necessarily, once in a while maybe, but most of the time not. So why reinvent the wheel, right? Take an existing pattern that people are already using successfully and make sure that you're following that pattern too, because you're going to make it easier for everybody. And then when you find these kind of places that you are finding great information in, whether it's tutorials or online resources or websites that you're getting really good code ideas or code details from, bookmark them so you don't have to remember next time and go search for it. It'll be there for you. See, it's not that bad. It really isn't. And the more you do it, the more information you'll have, which will make it so much easier going forward. And that is the big payoff down the road for you. Okay, we've talked about how it helps your users, it helps your developers, it helps QA, but that actually helps you, because then as you go through and you're working on other projects, you know right where to go and get that information. You don't have to figure it out. You don't have to guess. You don't have to wonder about, oh, well, did I forget something? It's all right there for you. And if as you go forward you did miss something, you can go and fix it in whatever current project you're on, go into the data dictionary, and then you won't miss it going forward. Jessica says, I used to specify fields a few years ago. Okay, cool. So that's great. So Jessica on Facebook is backing up the fact that, yes, this is something that is and should be a part of everybody's requirement process, especially when you're doing software. That is just, it's part of the information, just like security, you know, any database stuff that you're doing, any business rules, any workflow stuff, any upstream and downstream, all this stuff would be a part of your requirements. This needs to be it too. All right? Okay, I have been talking for a long time. But before I let you go, I do want to remind you that we have the mailing list. We invite you to go and sign up for it. It is how we communicate with you folks about the shows that are coming up, classes we offer, freebies we're giving away, lots of good information there, and it's free, and we don't collect a lot of information, and even better, we don't share that information with anybody. We only do this to get the information so that we can contact you. So feel free to sign up. It's real easy, real simple, couple fields, boom, you're done. And other than that, I think, let me just double check, I think I have covered everything that was on the list. Yes? Yes. Okay. So hopefully, fingers crossed, Mayor will be back next week. Time will tell. You know, some things are just out of our control, but I'm keeping my fingers crossed. I'm sure you are too, because she's much better about keeping it to a half hour. Here I am at an hour, right? Well, what can I do? Hopefully you found it useful. Hopefully you will share this with your fellow BAs, and get the movement going, right? Get those details into the requirements documents so that the developers don't have to guess. All right? Either way, whether it's Mare or it's me, somebody will be here next week for you on Tuesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. As always, if you have any questions, any comments, you can feel free to reach out to us. That's what we're here for. We actually love talking to you folks. So if you're watching this on a replay on Facebook or on YouTube, you can go ahead and throw stuff in the comments. Periscope folks, oops, come back, little thing. There we go. Go ahead and hit the website or hit us up on Twitter, whatever you prefer. We're flexible. All right. Thank you so much. I hope you're having a great week. I hope your projects are going well, and we will talk again next week. Bye.